Have you ever shopped blind? No, really. Have you ever gone to a website, put in your information, and just trusted that the person on the other end was going to send you something that you'd like? Well, what about in real life? Think about going into a store and trusting a complete stranger to give you a recommendation or show you where something is. Complete trust in the unknown. My guests today are creating a movement of people who will shop blind to end blindness. Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of Still Being Molly, and this show is all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview an entrepreneur, CEO, nonprofit director, or a community leader, or just really an incredible person who's trying to make a positive impact, not only through their personal life, but also with their career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact wherever you are. My guests this week are Bradford and Bryan Manning, founders of Two Blind Brothers. Two Blind Brothers makes ultra soft designer clothing from natural fibers for the sole purpose of funding blindness research. At a young age, Bradford and Bryan Manning were both diagnosed with an eye disease that causes blindness over time. This condition has inspired a special vigilance for details, a passion that carries over into the construction of their clothing line. They are both graduates of the University of Virginia, and they currently live in New York City. I personally have followed the work of Brad and Bryan for a few years now, and they are personal inspirations of mine. I was honored to have them as guests on the show, and I know that you are going to be encouraged, inspired, and so much more by their story. So, on to my conversation with Bradford and Bryan. Hey, Brad and Bryan. Welcome to the Business with Purpose podcast. I am so honored to have you guys on the show today.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to join you.
So I want to first introduce you guys for your voices, because obviously those that are listening at home are going to be just, wanting to know who is who. So Brad, Bryan, whoever wants to go first, introduce yourselves.
So this is Brad.
And I am Bryan, a little bit deeper, more intelligent voice.
Oh my gosh. Before we started recording, I was telling you guys how much of a fan I am of you and your work. Just the two of you as human beings, but also with the work that you're doing with Two Blind Brothers. And I first came across you, I guess, in the holiday season of 2017, when you guys did the first Shop Blind holiday, which we're going to get into in a little bit because I definitely want to talk about that. And I just started following your work since then. You guys have been featured on some of the world's most famous news outlets. You guys were on Ellen, which is like life goals to be on Ellen. Like, who doesn't want to be on Ellen? And so I'm a huge fan. So I want you guys to do what all my guests do, and that's give us the Brad and Bryan 101. So tell us who you are, what you do, and how you guys got to where you are today.
So Bryan and I both have a rare eye condition called Stargardts disease, which destroys your center vision, but usually leaves you with a decent amount of peripheral vision. And we were diagnosed with that when we were young, around 7 years old. And it's always been a part of our lives. We had great parents, great resources. They gave us some incredible sort of advice in parenting that let us be successful. We both went to the University of Virginia. We both ended up working in different careers in New York City. And then about 3 years ago, we were shopping and coincidentally bought the same exact shirt at this store. We had lost each other in the store. And when we came out, we had to play rock, paper, scissors because you can't wear the same shirt as your brother when you live in and hang out in the same city. But it got us talking about why that was. And if you are blind or you're visually impaired, touch is something that's so critical to you. We had both sort of stumbled upon this soft shirt because we run our hands over the clothing racks like we're 5 years old before we do all the work to find out if it's the right size, color, price, or if it's even a men's shirt. And so we got talking. We had one of those moments where you get carried away talking with your family or friends, and we started this idea that maybe we could turn this attention to touch and our commitment, which had been there sort of our entire lives, to supporting these research organizations that look for cures for blindness for conditions like ours, and turn it into a clothing brand. And then we basically have just had the greatest adventure over the past 3 years growing it. We've tapped into an energy in that community and people who care about social impact and great clothes. And it's been a life-changing project for us.
That's incredible. So I have a real quick question. So were you guys actually diagnosed with Stargardts disease at the same time, or were you diagnosed years apart?
No, so this is Brian. Brad was diagnosed first, and he's 5 years older than me, but we just so happened to become symptomatic at the same age, both at 5 years old. So I was diagnosed second, which was very convenient for me, to be honest. I didn't have to go through a battery of tests. They basically like, you can't see well, he's probably got Stargardts.
Interesting. Have you guys learned, I'll be honest, this is obviously something that I'm not super familiar with. Is this something that, is just a coincidence you guys both have it? Is it a genetic, is it something that you're genetically predisposed to have something like this?
Yeah, so Stargardts is a genetically inherited disease. But interestingly enough, both of our parents were actually recessive carriers, and nowhere in our family tree does anybody have Stargardts that we know of. And for anybody out there who hasn't heard of Stargardts, it's a juvenile form of macular degeneration, which a lot of people's grandparents have. We just got diagnosed with the disease at a very young age. And, to give some perspective, retinal eye diseases affect around 11 million Americans today.
Wow. And I know that from sharing just kind of through your story over the years, is it Brad, and forgive me, is it Brad or Brian that one of you kind of has it a little bit worse? Not trying to downplay one or the other, but just kind of it's manifested itself differently in you guys. Is that correct?
It's very, very similar. This is Brad, and I would say mine is a tiny bit worse. But one of the things that's tough about it is it actually is a degenerative disease. So at some level, I'm 5 years older, so that is potentially part of that as well.
Yeah, so it just continues to kind of develop over the years.
But you're stirring up a competition that we don't want to get into.
No, for sure. And this is obviously something that has really affected you guys, and but now the way that you inspire me so much is that you've taken this thing that for a lot of people, could really set you back. But instead, it's really set you guys up to change the world and to have an impact on literally millions of people. And you've used it as the foundation to of having an impact for good. And so I'd love to kind of dive in a little bit deeper into how you guys kind of came up with the idea of creating a clothing brand. And I know that you said that a lot of it has to do with you experience the world through touch. And I have 2 young kids, so I do know what you're talking about. And they say that kids literally will go in a store and touch everything. And they put their mouth on everything. And I'm like, why? And I remember my pediatrician was actually like, that's how they discover the world. And I'm just like, but why does my daughter have to lick the handrail on the escalator? Why is that a necessary thing?
I know. I finally recently got Brian to stop doing that as well.
I was just exploring if the handrail was edible.
No. Oh my gosh. But it's true. In that experiencing the world through touch is a really big thing. And I love that you guys decided to kind of create this clothing line. But what's really unique about it is not just that it has this purpose-filled give back model where you are donating 100% of the proceeds to these amazing organizations that are fighting diseases like Stargardts and other forms of, vision issues and things like that. But you also are very committed to the ethics and sustainability behind the line. So I would love for you to just kind of share, when you guys came up with this idea for this business, how did you guys kind of decide what was really going to be your platform and how you were going to manufacture and all that kind of stuff?
So we've been very lucky. And it's kind of funny to look at the traction that the brand has had and try to put together why it's worked. And I think the reason is because we never intended for it to be any level of a successful business. It started with pure intentions and pure passion around helping the community and helping raise funds for research. And what that inevitably did for us is it consolidated the brand into a very, very direct message and hopefully an experience for the customers and the people witnessing what we're doing. Because, when we buy, when any of us shop a brand, it's because that brand reflects values that we care about. Oftentimes it's about quality. We want a piece of clothing or an item that sort of has quality. But we actually didn't start there. We started with the full intention that this would empower folks who have a vision impairment or relate to facing challenges and to making that social impact. And from that intention, a lot of the other decisions kind of fell into place quite easily. And then, we were very much coached by the community. When we put our story out there and we started telling people about this brand, it was really clear what they resonated with and what they didn't resonate with. They weren't shopping the brand initially because they needed a new Henley shirt and we were the only Henley shirt maker in town. They were doing it because of the story, because they thought it was supportive of the community and the research as well.
I love that perspective, and that is such an important, as a business owner, it doesn't even matter what industry you're in. I hear so often that sometimes business owners will start out with, the intention of doing one thing, and then they begin to get that feedback from their customers, from their client base. And sometimes it kind of requires a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a pivot in what you're doing, or maybe it's just refining what you're doing. I just think about, even when I launched this podcast, I thought I would only feature kind of like product-based businesses and business owners who are, manufacturing ethically or have a give back model or things like that. But over the years, I've learned that people want to hear the stories behind all types of entrepreneurs and business owners, whether you're product-based or service-based, or you're an author or a speaker, people that are using their careers to influence change, and how that has inspired so many other people to think about. Because, so a lot of times when we think about we want to impact the world or we want to change the world, we think about, we have to volunteer, get involved in our church. And those things are great and really important. But we can also use our professional path to really, shift cultures and change the world and change people's lives. So you guys are celebrating 3 years in business, which is huge. Congratulations. I'm giving you all the round of applause and standing ovation. I'd love for you guys to kind of share what has been the biggest shift that you've experienced in the 3 years that you've been in business. Are you guys doing this full time? I mean, I know that, you donate 100% of your profits to research. So, what are you guys kind of doing on a day-to-day basis?
I would say that the largest shift that's occurred has kind of been two separate pieces. One was at the very, very early on, when we were just made a few hundred shirts and we were just deciding to learn the world of apparel and learn the beginnings of an e-commerce brand, thinking that we were just going to sell shirts and then donate money to charity. That was our core thing. And one of the biggest paradigm shifts occurred is after we put out our original video, it got quite a bit of traction, and we started getting messages from all over the country, from people, reaching out who had a vision impairment. And the one that struck me the most solidly was a gentleman who lived about 45 miles outside of Albuquerque, so kind of in the middle of nowhere, as he said. And he had a retinal eye disease his entire life, had never met another person with an eye disease, but had seen our video on Facebook, had read through all of the comments, and said for the first time he felt like he had a community.
Wow.
And reached out to a bunch of organizations to get help and meet more people in his area. And in that moment, the whole project took a shift to add a third pillar to what we were doing. It wasn't about making unbelievably soft shirts. It wasn't about donating money back to charity, but it was also about creating a community and fostering hope and inspiration for people that we deeply care about. And so that was probably the largest tectonic shift in the business for me, at least.
Now, I want to talk about the Shop Blind Holiday that I mentioned at the beginning. So this is obviously how I first came across you. It was a video that, went viral online promoting the Shop Blind Holiday. And the moment that I saw this video, I was blown away by this incredible kind of campaign that you guys came up with. So for those that are not familiar with it, share the vision behind this campaign and where it all came about and what it is.
So the Shop Blind experience, which we've done a couple times now, and has been kind of a transformational marketing campaign for our brand. It's a video that we put out on social media and that we advertise. And the video sort of explains the following. It says, if you're blind or you're visually impaired, one of the tools that you use is trust in other people. So if Brian and I are at a restaurant, we can't see the menu, we'll trust a waiter for a recommendation on what to eat. If we're in a subway or on a bus and there's a stop that we can't see, we'll trust the stranger to tell us where we are. And we want to challenge the visitors to Two Blind Brothers, our clothing brand, to trust us. And so what that means is that we basically take down and crash the entire website. We get rid of all the images, all the products. It's essentially a black page with 3 price points and question, will you shop blind? And, when we originally came up with this idea, we actually thought it wouldn't generate any sales. We thought it was a great story. We thought it was great brand integrity. It kind of like brought the, obviously it's not like literally being visually impaired, but, it brought an awareness and a brand integrity experience that we thought would be really valuable to those people who were deeply connected to what we were doing. But we completely underestimated how people would react to this. All our sales, anything related to, to our advertising skyrocketed. We got awards from Facebook corporate for it. We were able to do tremendous sales for our business during the holiday. And then, back to sort of the core mission, obviously it helps us donate money to research. But the success of the video let us distribute the video wide and far, and it reached so many people, and we heard from so many that are affected with these conditions. So it's now become sort of a core thing that we do. We annualize it every year, and we're also coming up with some other creative ways and sort of spin-off ideas from it as well.
I can tell you right now, when we were first launching it, I was terrified. I said to Brad, I go, this is the busiest shopping time of the entire year, and we're going to take down our whole website. That doesn't seem like a business plan, my friend. And eat crow ever since.
It really is a genius idea. And I does not surprise me at all that Facebook gave you guys awards for it. The video is fantastic. I really actually want to unpack something that I think is part of what I personally connected with so much. And that's this kind of idea of trust, and how, to be honest, we kind of live in a more modern, or I don't know, that's not the right way to say it. We live in kind of a day and age where trust of strangers is not what it used to be. And I love that you guys kind of really talk about the importance of trust and how you guys are really dependent upon trust in so many, everyday situations. I'm kind of one of those person, like I see the world through rose-colored glasses most of the time. I'm an Enneagram 2, if you know what that is. And so I'm a helper. Like, I just really love people. And when I'm out and about, like, I always introduce myself to strangers. And I typically tend to trust people kind of implicitly before I have a reason to not trust them, which I realize like sometimes is like to my detriment, but more often than not, like it allows me to connect with people in a way that I might not. And, kind of make friends in very random places, like the cashier at Target or the clerk at the gas station or, the woman at the drive-through window. Like I develop kind of these unique relationships with these pretty much strangers. But I'd love for you guys to kind of unpack that a little bit and how the trust of people and the collective good of humanity is something that you guys in a lot of everyday situations really depend on. And I love that idea of like, do you then trust us? If we have to kind of go around and trust other people, do you trust us? Can you guys talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's as straightforward as it honestly sounds, but even though it sounds a little unique, is when you are blind or visually impaired, as Brad said earlier, when you can't see something, when you have difficulty reading a menu, recognizing a face, seeing small print, seeing large print in a lot of cases, you have to rely on the people around you for that assistance. And what might be surprising to some is that trust almost never goes against you. And frankly, it actually creates more, people are happy to help you. People we've found really honestly want to help if you give them the opportunity to do it. And one amazing thing, one value we think we've gotten from our visual impairment, which a lot of are thankful for, which a lot of people find odd to say a value from a degenerative eye disease, is your ability to be social. Because when you see somebody at a party or at a coffee shop or walking down the street, you may not be able to recognize them, or I won't be able to recognize them at all. So I treat everyone who approaches me like my best friend, because because they probably are if they're talking to me, and if they're not, they soon will be, because I'm so excited to see them. And that ability and that putting yourself out there and taking ownership of conversations has become an invaluable skill, and it's played a lot into the trust aspect as well.
I'm taking a quick break from my chat with Brad and Bryan to share with you something I'm so excited about, and that is the fall collection with Seiko Designs. This collection is incredible. You will be inspired by the richness of the season's colors like pebbled amore and oiled olive. Let the fall collection not only be a celebration of travel, but also a celebration of the journey within. My favorite pieces are the multi-way shawl in the Leo print, the How It's Made Matters tee, and the caftan in Chianti. I know that I am going to be repeating these pieces all fall long. Oh, and not to mention the multi-way tunic sweater in black that can be literally worn 5 different ways. You guys know versatility is my love language. Now, to shop this incredible collection, go to seikodesigns.com/Molly Stillman. That's SSEKO designs.com/Molly Stillman. Now, back to my chat with Brad and Bryan. Who has had the biggest impact on you guys? Like, I know that you guys have talked about how amazing your parents are. Were there people along the way that have really encouraged you in the launch of this business, or really supported you or kind of guided you?
Yeah, there's sort of two. Obviously, we've had these like catalytic moments for the brand. Obviously when like Ellen DeGeneres and some of these other, we gotten some support from people like Richard Branson and Ashton Kutcher. But, in terms, and I'm not sure if that's what you're interested in, or more about, on how we grew up.
Well, I think really just, as you guys, I mean, obviously meeting Ellen, Ashton Kutcher, Richard Branson is like awesome. And those are definitely, I think, catalytic in the business. But I guess I'm really more asking, like, as you guys have really kind of gotten into this business and really found sort of the path that you've really kind of been called to, like, is there anybody kind of in your personal lives that has just really impacted you or guided you along the way?
Yeah, we've gotten just great nuggets of wisdom that kind of came to us through our experience with vision impairment and, our experience with two blind brothers being sort of a big manifestation of that. But the first thing that we learned from our parents was to embrace challenges. And that's something we all kind of know, but the real kind of theory behind it is that there really is no growth without friction. And you're never going to really unlock your potential, your creativity, your assertiveness, your resourcefulness, unless you're put into a position to challenge those things. And so kind of cultivating that spirit of leaning into things that are a little outside of your comfort zone has been a really big theme of the life of Bryan and I. And we've gotten some other great advice too. When you pity somebody, you disempower them.
That's
even if that's yourself. And that actually, that line actually comes from an incredible girl named Claire who passed away at 19 from cystic fibrosis. But that is another sort of like core theme for us. When we try to put out messages to our community on social media, or when we get the opportunity to, we want people to see two brothers that have been very fortunate to be successful and don't feel held back by their vision impairment. And then, we've gotten just great sort of business advice, both from our dads, from some of our business mentors, from people who have helped us be successful. We knew nothing about fashion or e-commerce or branding coming into this. So, the entire process has been filled with great angels around us that have helped us get here.
And I would only add, it would be remiss of us not to mention, the team at Two Blind Brothers. They are unbelievable people who work beyond diligently and so efficiently to make sure that this project keeps running. And they're the heart and soul of this just as much as Brad and I are.
Oh, that is so good. I am just sitting here like literally wanting to just like stand up and be like, yes, preach. Because that is like, there's so much that you just said that oh man, I want to put it on a t-shirt. I want to like.
Oh, some guys that can make some t-shirts if you're interested.
Yeah. Y'all have a t-shirt company. So, but that notion of getting first, I want to unpack like getting uncomfortable or getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that how you talked about there's no growth without friction. And man, that is such a lesson that is valuable in every aspect of life. Like I think about just in my own personal experiences and walk with God and even in my like physical fitness journey, like my trainer every single day at the gym when I'm cursing her, when she's handing me a heavier weight or making me do more reps or more burpees, she'll literally say, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you're never going to see change in your body and your physical fitness until you get uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, I hate that you're right, but you're so right. And then, and then I think about like when I've walked through grief, and experienced loss, like that's where I've grown the most in my faith journey. And, so all those things like that is so important. And so I love that those things have been really kind of woven into your lives and in your business.
Yeah, it's been critical for Bryan and I, and we got that early from our parents. They always positioned our vision as something so kind of irrelevant to our strengths. It was never even mentioned, half the time when we were choosing what sports to do, and we would throw out things like, oh, we want to try t-ball, or we want to study Japanese, or it was never, they never said anything like, oh, but you might have trouble with that because of your vision. The method was always go out and try, and then fail potentially, or succeed, or find the workarounds, and it was cultivating that spirit that we think is so critical. And actually, and part of it also comes from our experience, with the community. I think one of the things that really touches Bryan and I is that we had never met anyone growing up who had vision impairments, maybe once or twice. But running this brand, we get messages on social media, on our customer service, that people did not have that advice. They, not because of any malintent, and maybe it wasn't even the wrong decision for them, but they were protected, overly protected, whether they were individuals or their parents thinking about kids. And we kind of are. We really want them to understand that that our path was to err on the side of letting that person, letting yourself fail, just to learn the lessons and get comfortable with rejection, and to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, as you said, because otherwise you're never going to know your full potential.
Yes, that's so good. And the other thing that you guys said was when you talked about how when you pity someone, you disempower them, and how you want people to see that you guys are just two brothers who have been fortunate to be successful, and don't feel held back by this disease. And I will just say, like, as a consumer, as somebody who's just followed your work, like, that is what I see. I see two just amazing humans who are brothers, who are just telling their story and using their story to impact others. But I think that lesson is so important. And I obviously, on this podcast and on my blog, I talk a lot about kind of fair trade, ethical brands. And a lot of times these brands are manufacturing or working in developing nations, or working with artisan groups all over the world. And I talk very openly about how, like, we have to be really careful when we have those conversations about many of these groups, that we talk about it from an empowerment narrative. And it's like, no, these are people who are our colleagues. We see them as incredible men and women who are, they just happen to live in a different culture, and they want to provide for their families. We don't pity them because they live in a developing nation, or they might be coming out of poverty. These are men and women that we are empowering, and we're uplifting and elevating their voices. And so I think that that's a message that is so applicable in so many different ways, whether we're talking about kind of, medical diagnoses, or diagnosi, I don't know. Whether we're talking about something like that, or we're talking about, a physical disability, or, or even just kind of, the community that somebody might be coming from. Like, we never want to pity people, because, like you said, you disempower them. So oh man, that's so good. Bryan, I don't know if you want to kind of unpack that a little bit, and how you guys have kind of struck that balance over the last 3 years, and really over your lives.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of it came from an early age, right? Like, especially when you first get diagnosed with a disease like Stargardts at a young age, at the age of 7, a lot of your mentality and a lot of your ability is based around how your parents interact with you with it. And it was always taught to us as a hurdle to overcome, and that was going to be our issue. But the other side of that, as we've talked about with you, is that everyone in the world has their issue. And your visual impairment doesn't make you any better. It makes you maybe just a little different. And your challenge frankly, you're a little fortunate that you know what your biggest challenge is probably going to be for most of your life already. And other people might be working on finding theirs. And so don't look down on anybody or put any pity or any sort of inflection on anybody, because that's not what you want from the world around you. You want to be given a fair shake in everything that you do, and you should have that same respect and mindfulness. And, you know, at some level, when you do have a quote unquote disability, a lot of you're, for us at least, it makes that understanding a little bit easier, especially Brad and I don't have, you know, pardon the pun here, a visible disability that so a lot of people, until they meet us or understand us, may not know. And so that's been another little blessing.
Oh, that's a really great point. And like I said, I applaud you guys for the work that you've done and the way that you guys have really just struck such an incredible balance. And I think y'all are amazing, obviously. So I have to ask this question. What's it like working with your brother? Whoever wants to answer that.
A nightmare every single day, just horrid. No, we joke that it's great working with your brother because Brad and I have 30 years of experience fighting with each other. Where you have to deal with your coworkers who you've known for 6 months. Brad and I just know how to bicker like old women. It's been amazing.
I am dying. That's hilarious. So as we kind of wrap up here, and before we get to our get to know you round, I'd love for you guys to just kind of share, where are Two Blind Brothers headed? What is in the future for you guys? You know, we are a couple months away, which is like literally hard to believe. We're a couple months away from the holiday season again. It's amazing how it just keeps coming back around. But what's on the forefront for you guys here in the immediate future, and what's your vision for the next few years, pun intended?
So we've got a couple very exciting things. You know, the brand has hit some huge inflection points in the last few months. We've really sort of nailed down, like we said, we're sort of 3 years old now, so we're finally learning how to walk. We're finally we look like our operations have sort of been professionalized, and we have great systems in place. And so now it's really about two things. We need to round out our entire collection. So, we make casual wear. And when somebody falls in love with the story, or they fall in love with the fabric in a particular product, we want to make sure that we can fill their closet with all the soft things that they wear. So we have a lot of really cool products coming out. And number two is just keep finding innovative ways to share the message. I mean, that Shop Blind experience has been transformational for our brand and very impactful in the community. We want to find other kind of unique punctuated campaigns that maybe look a little different than how people are used to sort of shopping or experiencing a brand.
Brad and Bryan, this has been absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to see how the Shop Blind Holiday continues to grow, how Two Blind Brothers continues to grow, the impact that you guys continue to have on, raising funds for research. It's just incredible. And I'm so grateful for you guys coming on this podcast and telling your story. Y'all are amazing. But this is actually, before we go, this is the time of the show that was one of my favorite times. And that is where we transition a little bit to the get to know you round. And so, Brad and Bryan, are you guys ready?
Yes.
Okay, question number one. If you were a professional athlete, let's think baseball player, what would your walk-up song be?
Mine would have to be anything by Celine Dion. Really get the crowd in the mood.
Bryan, I didn't realize you were a Celine Dion fan. Like, my heart will go on.
I love her. She's amazing.
Like, I love you, Renee. Oh, man. Yeah. That's amazing. Brad, what would yours be?
Mine would be the Stevie Wonder song. I'm going to remember the name here. Sir Duke. by Stevie Wonder.
That's a good one. That's the dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one. You can feel it all over. All right. Question number 2. What is something that I would never guess about you?
I am obsessed with chess, playing chess,
Oh.
and Chinese lessons.
Chinese lessons. That's awesome.
I love to run, and I run a marathon every year.
That's incredible, Brian, because I ran 1 half marathon in my life and said, all right, I think I'm good. Like, I'm all set. I would not want to do that again. So that is amazing. Have you had a particular marathon that's been your favorite experience?
I got to run the marathon in Dublin, Ireland, which was one of the most spectacular experiences of my entire life.
Okay. I might want to do that one, but I'd probably walk it. But it'd be cool.
There's a beer at the end, so it's a wonderful time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Question number 3. Now, obviously, we know the platform that you guys are really passionate about, but I love to ask this question, and that is, what's something that is really important to you, but you never actually really get the chance to talk about it?
It's funny. This also bleeds into the last question, but I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Oh, wow.
And it never gets, I don't talk about it really in a lot of our social media stuff because we just haven't sort of found, we think at some point maybe we can think about a project that helps support, that community and that condition. But yeah, I'm a type 1 diabetic as well as having the eye condition.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a lot of really close people in my life who also are type 1 diabetics. And that's something that you're right. It's not talked enough about. And so I will be saying some prayers over here to kind of like what maybe leads you to kind of incorporating that into your business, or maybe there's some give back portion there or something like that. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Something that doesn't get talked about enough for me, I would say that for anybody with a major challenge out there, because this is just advice that I wish I'd gotten in middle school and high school, is that just having the challenge and overcoming it, even if you're not doing the most wonderful job at it, even if you have bad days with it, you're ultimately going to come out on the other side better for it than you would if it wasn't there. So, it isn't always easy, but to embrace that challenge and just understand that one bad day isn't a bad thing, and you have a lot of great ones in between is really important.
Yeah, that's really important and great advice. All right, my last question, and this is one that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does it mean to you to run a business with purpose? And I'd like for you both to answer, so whoever wants to go first can go.
I'd love to go first. Brad and I really love to think that we didn't come into Two Blind Brothers with any fashion experience, any e-commerce experience, any social advertising experience at all. And we've been able to build our passion project and something that's very close to our heart to the point that we get to talk to you today. And our big advice is that right now there's an opportunity that your passion is truly scalable. And if our little clothing company that can help inspire somebody to go out and run their own cause-driven company, then we're getting a multiplicative effect on what we're doing, which is vitally important to us. We want to act as a blueprint, as an example for somebody else, because there's a lot of diseases and a lot of great causes out there who could use help. And your passion might align very closely with that assistance.
That's so good.
Yeah, and then for me, this is Brad again, but for me, it's running a business with a purpose is not as meaningful to me as running a business around my purpose or our purpose, which is to help fight vision impairment. And I think that it kind of relates to what Brian was saying, but one of the amazing things about this moment in time is that, communities can be reached now in a way that they couldn't be reached 10 years ago. If Brian and I wanted to start a clothing brand 10 years ago, we would have had to plan, a mass media advertising buy to get scale. We would have had to buy inventory to fit that scale. We would have had to water down our brand message to something that relates to the most people, something that speaks to maybe just price and quality. And the fact that, you can now have an impact in an area that is personal to you. And not only that, areas that are very, very personal to you are probably the places you can have the most significant impact. That's something we've been the big beneficiaries of that. And, you get to wake up every day, see the community's reaction from what you're doing, think creatively about how to tell your story in a compelling way. And it's a very, very motivating and satisfying way to spend your time.
Such valuable advice. And I love that you said that it's really about also your purpose, because that is important, is making sure that you have a passion and a why behind your business. Because if you don't have that fire and that drive that consumers and your clients and your customers and your community is going to connect with, then, obviously you guys have seen so much success because there is that passion and drive and that kind of purpose behind it that really drives it, that people connect with and resonate with. So, Brad, Brian, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. For the listeners, I will have all of their contact information in the show notes, how you can shop, how you can support, and then, obviously be on the lookout in a few months for the Shop Blind holiday campaign. And like I said, I cannot wait to continue to see you guys grow and thrive. Thank you. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to know what you loved about this episode or something that you learned. If you do, let me know on social media. You can find me at Still Being Molly or at Business with Purpose Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget that hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast. And don't forget to check out and shop the Seiko Designs fall collection at seikodesigns.com/Molly Stillman. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you're a first-time listener of the show, welcome. Be sure to visit the archives for past shows featuring incredible entrepreneurs and business owners who are literally changing the world with their businesses. And if you are a regular listener of the show, thank you so much for tuning in and week out, and thank you for your support. Be sure to head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click that subscribe button to help make sure you never miss a new episode of the podcast. And while you're there, would you take a moment to leave a review? Leaving a review of the show really just helps me to know what you're liking and how the show is personally impacting you. This show is edited by my incredible husband and executive producer, John Stillman, with support from Kelly Dalton, and the music is by Mark Killian of Third Wheel Media. Thank you so much for listening, and go do something good with purpose on purpose.